Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel, and also to it's kind of going to be a Stitch with me update about my progress and everything else that I've been working on this project. Before I start, I just want to say I hope you all had a really good Christmas and Boxing Day. Yesterday was Boxing Day, yeah, that's right. And I hope you had fun and enjoyed your time with your families. I certainly got a lot of stitching in over the Christmas break, and yeah, I seem to spend a lot of time really focusing on two particular pieces. This one, of course, because I kind of wanted to do this one as a Christmas stitch, and I've also been focusing on my Riverwalk charm, which is my sort of ongoing long journey, I like to call it, a kind of piece. And since I kind of decided to make, just narrow down my pieces, I've seen such a huge leap in progress. It's a lot more inspirational for me. It's a lot more motivating for me to see more progress and actually continue with the pieces. So I have been getting quite a lot done on this beautiful chart, and this is of course, it's a Thomas Kincaid, and it's called Home for the Holidays. It is a heaven and earth design, and it is a mini version of the regular or large or whatever size that was originally kind of made for sale on the website. And yeah, I feel like I've got a huge amount of progress into this, because the last time I think I showed it to you, and I can't remember exactly what video that was, I'd only just kind of managed to finish this little post box here in the corner. So I kind of I've kind of really leapt forward with it. And the other thing, so I want to talk to you a little bit about how I'm working this piece. And I did make a few changes, and inevitably sometimes that's going to happen. We start a piece in one way, whether it's diagonal or whether it's blocks, and then some point down the line we suddenly decide, oh no, I'm kind of bored of this, or I want to change it up, or I want to switch it around. But I kind of had been going on, really feeling the diagonal for a good long stretch. And then I decided that no, I didn't want to do the diagonal any longer. And I hadn't even really got that far into it. I think I'd only kind of just got this corner up to about here, just past the post box. And then I decided I wanted to continue differently. So since that happened and I had this diagonal line, I thought, well, I really want to go back to doing more like columns or blocks now. How do I do that? So I kind of, got rid of my diagonal line by continuing across, and I'd done this whole sort of working from right to left, working in blocks, going sort of downwards, but moving to the left. And that was taking me obviously down to here, to this direction. I managed to get all this lovely detailed part here. And so what I'm working now is top to bottom in vertical blocks. And I'm not really snaking it, so to speak. When I say snake, I mean the snake method, which I've seen online. On flosstube, some people do it, and it's kind of working from left to right, right to left, left to right, right to left within a block, maybe 10 stitches or 20 stitches across, something like that. And I kind of forfeited doing that because I decided that it would be easier to actually, especially in the areas where I've got just maybe two or three colours going all the way down. In these areas, why not just do one colour at a time in such a small space? So as you can see, this was this colour here that's already been done. I'd gone down and done the whole lot to the bottom of this section, and now I'm going to do another colour and go down. But I'm only doing that when I kind of have just very few colours, because if it's really heavily confetti here, I do not want to do the cross country, because it'll be too much. Because I'm using 2 strands and I'm doing tent stitch, there'll be too many carrying the thread across here, there and everywhere multiple times. And I'd much rather work in rows and go 1 stitch beside each other when I have too many colours It's more methodical, it's easier. Each stitch gets done. The ninja stitch or the confetti stitches aren't that troublesome in that respect. And yeah, I find that I can get things done better when there's too much confetti if I do the snake method. So what I've got at the moment is I'm just doing, this is one colour that I'm just going to fill in this section here. And I do apologise if my hand does kind of get in the way, but really it is tricky to set this up if you're working. You're right-handed, you need to have the camera on one side of you. It can be, yeah, definitely can be tricky. So I have really been enjoying working this piece, so much so that I've been more interested in working this one than I have on my Riverwalk charm. I am still interested in working in the Riverwalk charm, but at the moment where I'm at is on crazy amounts of tree area, which has got loads of branches and loads of leaves, and it can really sort of drive you a bit insane after a while. So you kind of do need to change it a little bit. That is for sure. I mean, coming to this one from that particular chart, it was nice to be working this area down here because I was then starting to see more of the details here. And then when I decided that, because it is quite confetti in this area, and you can find yourself spending more than an hour on one 10 by 10 block, especially where you see these highlighted parts in between the sleigh. I could not believe, but there's like 30 different colours inside each of those little areas. And there were points when it was driving me so mad that I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm actually going to do one of these like ninja stitches in the colour that I'm already using, because it looks so much like the colour that I'm already using. I don't see the point of ending it and starting a new thread when it is so similar. Now, I don't really like to do that very often, especially in areas where the details actually matter. But when you've got two colours that you look at and you really can't tell the difference. I know it's very subtle and I don't do it often, but if I can get away with it and there's just one ninja stitch in the whole area that doesn't look particularly different to another colour that I've used in that area, I will just mow it down. Yeah, definitely. Because, you know, sometimes you just think to yourself, life's too short. So, yeah. You really couldn't tell. You really couldn't tell in this lightish area whether one of those stitches is slightly pinker or slightly beiger or slightly yellower. You couldn't really tell. But you do have to be careful with doing that kind of thing on the whole. So that's where I was with that. And this was really hard going, actually. Those yellow sections were hard going. So then it was nice to kind of go back to doing what I'm doing up here at the moment, which is basically, let me see, probably 3 or 4 colours just in this area. Which is great because it does give your brain a little bit of a rest, and after a while you do need a little bit of a rest from very detailed areas. Now I have some I need to get one of those, I don't remember what you call them, snag habit, I forget, nabbit, something like this. I've seen a few people using them and they're supposed to help you get some of the threads back through from the front to the back that have kind of come through to the front, shouldn't have come through to the front. Yeah, so I'm going to be on the lookout for that. I don't know if they sell them in the UK, but I'm pretty sure they'll sell them somewhere. That might be useful. So whilst I'm not particularly a gadgety person, I do, you know, find some things useful every so often. Right. So this is nice relaxing stitching when you haven't got too much colour changes. Just going to take a quick sip of my tea. So let's see, let me talk a little bit more about this actual mini version, because I know that a lot of people choose the large and the regular and the max colour because they want, you know, obviously, and rightly so, they want to get as much detail as they can. That's, you know, one of the things that we admire about these charts is the actual detail and how much you can appreciate that when the piece is finished. For myself, I reached a point where I'd already been working for the past year or two on large charts and really not seeing a huge amount of progress, to be honest. Like, there was progress, but there was progress in all the wrong places. Like, I was working on Riverwalk Charm is basically pretty much 90% landscape. There isn't a lot of details in it anyway, and it's pretty big. So I was working mostly sky in that one and tree area. So I was getting branches and leaves and sky, and branches and leaves and sky, and more branches and leaves and sky. And that was going on for months and months. And then I was always also working on grandparents and fireflies, which was just nearly all purple and sky. And then I picked up another one which had all black along the top, and that's what I'd been working for most of the year. And I actually burnt myself out to the point where I just stopped enjoying the stitching, and I was trying not to, I was kind of trying to ignore that feeling because I didn't want to acknowledge it. And I don't want to go all into it again because I'd already talked about this fully, more or less, in my previous video. But ultimately, I stopped enjoying things as much, and then decided that it wasn't going to work for me to continue as I was. So I had to pick up focus pieces, which I've done. So I thought, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to carry on with Riverwalk Charm because it is like the beloved chart that I have started. It was the first one I've started ages ago, as well as Sad Fairy, which she's put away for the moment. But Riverwalk Charm was the favourite for ages, and I'm not going to let that one go I'm not going to ignore that one because I spent so much time on it. I've got so much progress on it. It would make me cry, literally, if I just dumped it, and I'm not going to do that. What have I done here? Got that colour there. So then I said, well, it's coming up to Christmas. I want to work on a Christmas chart. What chart shall I do? And I've always wanted to do a Thomas Kincaid. And then because of my burnt outedness of doing large charts, I thought I don't really want to pick up another large chart. Then I'm going to end up back in the same boat that I was with my larger ones that I've already got. But I really like this one. Now, best thing I could do is go and look at a mock-up of it and see if I can live with it. That's basically the decision you make. You go look at the mock-up of a smaller version, and then you decide, can I live with the loss of details? Can I not live with the lost details? And if you like it enough, off you go. Okay, so we have to be happy with the choice that we make, and really it doesn't matter whether somebody else likes that decision or not. It really is up to you what you want to stitch and how you want to stitch, etc. So whilst I don't obviously would like to get a decent, picture and not have too much loss of detail, I'm prepared to compromise on time versus detail if I'm still happy with the version or what it looks like when it's finished. So this mini is just a fraction of the size of the large one. And what I did was I went to the mock-up and I blew up the mock-up photograph, and I blew up the normal sized photograph, and I scanned it to see, and I'm not entirely sure whether that's, actually 100% accurate. What I'm looking at is exactly what I'm going to get or not. But it's a fair indication, and also had to take into account what type of picture this is. So we've got a fairly dark picture here, and from what I can see, the detailed areas like this, like these guys, they're already kind of in shadow. So for me, a lot of detail on that in this particular style of a picture isn't that terrible, because we're not looking at somebody's face where they're facing a light source, and you want to see all the details of that face, like a pupil and a mouth and a nose or eyelashes, certain details where you really want to get the best possible results. So they're already kind of in the dark and highlighted from behind. The light that's hitting them is coming from the left side. I'm just going to bring the picture up here so you can see what I'm talking about. So the light's coming from here and it's creating shadows. So they're sort of turning into silhouettes. So I'm thinking, now these are the areas that matter the most then, because as long as I can tell that we're looking at people and an animal and a horse and a sleigh, and there's two people there and there's somebody there and there's a snowman, as long as I can make that out, I'm okay with it. As long as it's not just one pixelated blob. In this particular picture, I'm okay with it. Any slight loss in the tree or whatever is not really going to make diddly squat of a difference, because look at the trees. They're already kind of blurred. They're all blended in. I'm not going to see too much difference in the house either, because it's a house. Not looking for specific details in that particular picture. So overall, what I'm looking at here is perfectly acceptable to me, and even more so when I stand right back away from it, which I will be doing, get it up on a wall. I'm not going to say, oh, I can't see, the face on this guy, or I don't really think it's necessary to see his face clearly. I don't think it's necessary to see this boy's face clearly or this man's face clearly. As long as I can make them out, I think it still makes for a lovely picture. So had it been any less than it is, I might decide not to stitch it. But from a distance, I can tell that that's an animal there. I can tell that that's couple of people in the sleigh. I can tell that's a horse. That's really good enough. And the overall thing, the overall scene itself already appealed to me. So I decided, I'm going to go ahead with the mini. I'm happy with how it's going to come out. I don't need to see more details than there are. Now, obviously, if you do the larger version, you're going to get a bit more sharpness in this area. That's for definite. But you're also going to have to be prepared to put in an extra few years of stitching. So at the end of the day, right, in my opinion, I don't know, not everybody shares my opinion, and that's okay. I will compromise where I feel suits me best. So if I don't want to start another large chart and spend years and years, but it means I can choose a smaller version and have a little less detail, that's really my prerogative. And if I'm happy to do that, then that's fine for me. If you're happy to do that, that's fine for you. What I would say is do check the mock-ups if you decide to do a picture that is a smaller version of the original, and see whether you can live without those details. See whether you think, oh look, I think that's going to be okay. I don't mind if there's, you don't see sharp details here or there. Really, it's about what you're willing to compromise. And that is basically it. Because I know some people say, oh, you don't want to do the mini because you lose details. Well, yeah, that's an obvious point. You will lose details, but it's not set in stone that you can't do it. It is up to you. The minis are there for people to make choices. If nobody, she wouldn't post minis if they weren't an option. I mean, you seriously can't expect someone to put minis for sale and say, I'm going to post up mini versions for sale, but please don't stitch them because they won't look as good. Because that would be ridiculous. It is entirely up to the individual to make that decision. So having said that, and I'm not going to go on about it anymore, yeah, so I'm happy with the way I feel this is going to turn out. And I think it's going to look nice in a nice frame up on the wall. So I don't have a goal. The thing with goals makes me shudder a little bit, because every time I try to think about goals, it just makes me a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious about whether I'm ahead or behind, or am I. So I don't want tons of goals. So basically I've got a tentative idea of where I'm going with Riverwalk Charm. I want to finish that one by the end of 2026, I've said, and it's by giving myself that amount of time, I've got a good chance of doing it. Not something totally ridiculous like 30,000 stitches a month. I've got a good sort of goal that suits me and my daily, life and everything else that I have to do in my life. And this one, I would obviously like to have this one finished by next year, but I can't promise that, because again, I might suddenly turn around and say, well, I want to go and work on more of the other one, or I want to go and, do a little bit of the Tree of Life, which I still have in the picture. It's not in the rotation yet, but it's still in the picture. And there are still others that I want to get back to at some point, but they don't have goals, because too many goals, and I start to feel like it's all a job. There's nothing here that's pleasurable. I just feel like I'm doing a job and not getting paid for it. So I know there's people out there that can feel like that too. So it's not just me. But I like to not feel like I'm just don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. So so let's say tentative goals. That's where I'm at with working out some tentative goals that are not set in stone. Like, I can change if I need to change. Having said that, I've managed to get loads more done over this Christmas holiday than I thought I would. It's been really nice to stitch something like this, because I don't really, apart from the Snow Queen Mirabilia that I have, which I've also got loads done on, I don't have any other Christmassy pictures. I don't think nothing that I've started anyway. I suppose you could kind of call Sad Fairy a Christmas stitch, but because she's an angel, she's a fairy, but I don't really see that as much of a Christmas stitch. But this one, however, because it's got the snowman in, I guess, does feel very Christmassy. And I'm really enjoying these colours, really loving these colours a lot. So as I said, there isn't really any plan on the go for this one. It's just and the funny thing is, when I suddenly, the way my brain works, when I suddenly stop thinking about plans, I actually get more done, because I think it just comes from a place of wanting rather than having to, and that makes it altogether more pleasurable, I think, when it comes from a place of wanting and not having to. I think it can lend itself to getting more progress naturally, rather than, pretentiously, because you feel like, oh, I've got to reach a goal, I mean, some people thrive on that. They thrive on the real, I've got to do so many stitches by next week. And I wish I could be that organised, but it really wasn't working for me. Not properly. Not the way I liked it to have been working, or the way I wanted it to work. It just didn't work that way. But I think one of the interesting things about stitching, and stitching in a community especially, is how much you learn about yourself. Like, you learn about so much individuality, the things that you like, how you like to do them, when you like to do them. I mean, it really does bring out a lot of your own personality. And some of the things you can learn aren't always fantastic, but at the same point, it's good to discover new things about yourself, new things about your likes and dislikes. It is so good to get 300, 400, 500 stitches done in a day without really counting. Like, you just kind of get lost in your stitching, and then the next minute, like say you've been stitching for a couple hours, and then you look at your stats on your pattern keeper, and then you say, oh my goodness, I've actually done like 580 stitches, and I thought I'd probably only done like 150. That is really interesting. There's such a kind of buzz. It kind of makes you want to keep going as well. And I have to say, because I've always been on the fence about tent stitch, but I kind of have to say that it is actually making it go a lot quicker for me, more especially in these places where I've only got 2 or 3 colours. I'm just really, not that I'm actually stitching faster, but it's, you know, the stitches are getting filled in quicker. When it comes to the confetti areas, I think it's still a little bit, you know, a bit of a pain when you have to keep swapping colours, but this whole area, like I've been doing up here, which is all mostly tree around here, has been super quick with the tent stitch, and that's again one of the reasons. And I think the other thing, yeah, like I have discovered recently, that I don't know whether it's because I got burnt out by doing too much background, but I also feel like maybe I'm not as much of a process stitcher as I thought I was. I thought I was a process stitcher, and I would just, you know, only enjoy my stitching, and didn't make any difference to me when I'd get a finish, or it didn't matter to me if I ever got finished. And I've actually come to realize that no, that's not the case. I'm actually really looking forward to getting a finish on something. And whether my recent stitching habits have contributed to that or not, I don't really know, but I was in a bit of a doldrums somewhere around November, and I was thinking, I just feel like if I have to do any more, you know, squares of black or purple and barely make a dent in my overall piece, that I don't know, it's actually making me feel low. And yeah, I think sometimes you've got to be honest and you know, think about what it is you really want to be doing. Because, you know, like I said, I'm not getting any younger. A lot of us are not getting any younger. And if you enjoy having tons of charts on the go, that is your jam, stick with it. Honestly, just stick with what suits you the best. But just realise that not everybody has got the same intentions or needs. So where am I going here? This is a kind of grey colour. So there's a lot of greys and lilac mixed in here. I can't stitch with my left hand, which might have been better, but maybe like this would have been easier. I feel a bit like I'm at a wrong angle for some reason. I don't know why that is. So yeah, that is really what's been going down with the whole stitching thing, and I've been so much more relaxed about it. And you know, watching flosstube over Christmas, although there has been a marked decrease in things to watch because obviously everybody's been busy with families and everything, which is fine. I totally get that. I've been busy too. But yeah, I do like actually to have that company while I'm stitching, believe it or not. Although the last thing I want to do is to watch myself, which would be ridiculous. But hey, that's why I enjoy watching other floss tubers stitching when I'm stitching. So even though I'm not doing row by row at the moment, there is a fair bit of counting. There always is a fair bit of counting when you're doing this cross. I don't know if you can still call it cross country if you're working within such a small area like I'm working in at the moment. Can you still call it cross country? Or is it like mini cross country? I don't know. But if you just blindly go for a few seconds, you'll find that you've missed a stitch, or you haven't counted something properly. Yeah, and that's kind of frustrating, but I think I'm doing okay. But I don't think this thread that I'm using at the moment is going to last me right down to the bottom of this vertical column. But it's really been so quick choosing 5 stitches and 5 blocks and working downwards. And I think when I get to here, so my current idea is to work from the top down, say about 5 blocks, till I get to the end of this. I think I'm going to square this off when I get to the end of the horse, because, and I'll tell you why I don't think I'm going to carry on then this way, because in this picture there's a lot of details, like 90% of the details is on the bottom part of this picture. The top is all sky and house and trees, right? So if I do all of the bottom first, then all I've got left is the whole background area and stuff at the top. And I'm worried that that's going to slow me down. Okay, what have I done here? Oh, I'm up here. Worried that's going to slow me down, naturally. So I'm thinking maybe I should split the whole, let's do one section another. So what I'm going to do is maybe do a third of the picture, like keep going all the way up to the top till I reach the top, and then do the middle section all the way up to the top, and then do the first section all the way up to the top. So basically do it in thirds. And I drew this out, I think I drew this out yesterday or the day before, just to give me an idea how I could proceed. So here we've got, so I'm working here, this is my area that I've just filled in, like I've just roughly drawn a little thing. And so if I carry on to the top and do a third of the chart, then I do the whole middle third, and then I do that third. I'm actually doing detail, not so detailed, detailed, not so detailed on each section. So it kind of spreads it all out a bit. So I don't feel like, oh my God, now all I've got is sky for like 20%, 25% of the whole chart, or 50% of the whole chart. I can feel like I haven't done all the details first. So that's what I'm thinking could be the best idea. But who knows, right? Because sometimes I change my mind so much that it's actually a bit irritating when you change your mind so frequently, because you can't rely on yourself. And sometimes I think, am I even going to listen to myself? Because knowing me, in like a month's time, I'll be like, no, I want to go this way instead. Completely divert to a different direction, which is very, very irritating. Now, sorry. Now what am I looking for? I'm looking for a new colour. Actually, so I've still got some grey to be doing. And I'm using envelopes for this because I'm just finding that easier than messing around with trying to wind my threads back into, what do you call those things now? Bobbins. I'm finding it easier to just stick everything in an envelope. Just chuck it in and pick out a thread whenever I need a thread. It's just sped everything up as well for me. Okay, going from the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. So easy to start with that loop start. That's probably one of the best things I learned on flosstube, was to do a loop start. It's amazing how these little tricks can make things so much easier going forward. So whilst I'm doing this area that's all kind of, you know, not very detailed, it's all got like just leaves and trees and branches and stuff, I feel like if I make a mistake on a stitch, I'm not that bothered, but I don't want that mistake to kind of throw me off, that I'll make more mistakes. So I try not to make any mistakes at all, which I think most people also do. Try not to, but it's going to happen sometimes. And what I have found is trying to unpick stitches on 25 count, it's like trying to get blood out of a stone. I mean, as soon as I try to unpick a stitch, I've already frayed it or snapped it or broken it, and it doesn't really work. So I got the idea, tip somewhere about, don't bother trying to take out 1 or 2 stitches if you really if it's really not going to make a difference. And if you think you really want to put some of the original colour back in, you can go over it again with a strand. But apart from that, you know, don't kill yourself, because yeah, just basically it's not the end of the world. So 1, 1, 2, then I'm going to go here. So see how quickly you can work down through a whole 4 or 5 blocks, just doing one colour at a time. But I'm actually lucky that I don't have very few stitches in a colour. Most of the colours in this have got tons of stitches, so even quicker. I don't know what I've done here. Again, okay. So that's it, and I'm not even going to bother parking because I'm at the very bottom, and if I park somewhere in the bottom of the next block, it just doesn't really make sense for me, because I have to start at the top, and I don't even know if I need a thread down there when I get to that section. So for me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to park right down there. So I've been actually parking a bit less, but it's got a bit crazy over here because this area is, as you can see, it's got so many colours. These are all the colours that are shoved into that little area. And I think this particular area, when I was working down here, I think it took me a spread of 3 or 4 days, maybe even a week, because there are so many colours going on in here. I was literally doing one colour after the next, after the next, after the next, and they were all different. And I remember doing 20 stitches, a whole row and a row underneath, and every single hole had a different colour in it. And I thought, oh my god, this is crazy, but I'm just going to get through it slowly. And you know, each stitch is 1 stitch less to have to do. So it made a whole lot of sense to just slowly snake down, getting rid of all these crazy masses of colours, so that when I finally work on an area up here where I've got a bit more freedom, for me it's kind of like finding balance, finding a bit of balance in everything. Because eventually I would get tired of just doing this whole free non-detailed stitching all the way down. And I'd also get tired of doing the crazy confetti areas. So a bit of both, I think, really makes more sense for me. I mean, I know some people really love confetti. Some people really love ninja stitches. I don't know how that works, but fair dues. Oopsie. Now sometimes with 2 strands on a count like this, it is going to be difficult to get your needle through the back without a little bit of a push. And I've found that doesn't really happen to me when I'm using 1 strand and doing full crosses. But hey, there's a few pros and cons to everything, right? You're going to have to choose your pros and choose your cons. Just going to mark this off. So many greys at the moment and purples, light purples. And here's another little thing I thought I could mention, might not even affect you at all, but when you print one of your charts, do be careful the colours that, what it looks like colour-wise once you've finished printing it. Because when I printed mine and I looked at the picture, I'm thinking, wow, this is gorgeous blues. And I don't know, this probably isn't even going to translate well on the camera, but to me, this has got a lot of blue colours. When I put it next to my chart, when I put it next to my actual stitching, they're completely different. These are purple or light purple, and this is light blue. So this, whichever way my printer has translated these colours, it's not right. So if I was thinking this was my end result colour-wise, I was way wrong. This is it. It's more of a purple colour than a blue colour. Whilst I'm not particularly disappointed or anything, but I thought it just might be worth mentioning, that what you see is not always what you get. Funnily enough. Okay, so I'm just going to do another row or 2, and then I think that is going to be me done for this little stitching stint, which I kind of hope you've enjoyed. And I hope that some of the things I've said have been food for thought, if nothing else. It's always nice to kind of share our opinions because, we can get ideas from them, or we can relate to them, or we cannot relate to them. So I always like to be honest and talk about how things are going for me, rather than just come on and pretend everything's fantastic. I don't think I'd like to do that and just be pretentious and say, oh, my stitching life is fantastic, it's all going wonderfully. It doesn't always go wonderfully. There are days when I actually get low about it. There are days I don't want to do it at all. There's days where I really am enjoying it, and it swings and roundabouts, kind of like everything else in life. And so why deny that? Why, change the story from the one that's really there? And I don't think that I'm ever really going to stop stitching, but I'd hate to kind of make a bet on it because I don't know what the future holds. But I do hope in any case that I will continue to stitch and be happy with my stitching and the things I've chosen to do. because that's the most important thing at the end of the day. And I think it's taken me a lot of ups and downs and swings and roundabouts to get to points where I want to be, and made a few bad choices, mostly good choices, but also a few bad ones. Like I enabled myself, or I got enabled a bit too much for my taste, and it took me a while to realize that I had been too enabled and I wasn't coping with it, and it was just stressing me out more than anything else. And that's not a good place to be. Nobody wants to be in a place of stress or disillusionment, or maybe some people like to be in that kind of disillusioned state where they can, feel excited about having lots of things happening around them. But I've since discovered that that's not me, and I kind of like to have a bit more realistic, a more realistic path, more realistic thing going forward, rather than just throwing caution to the wind, throwing everything to the wind and saying, well, I don't care if I'm only going to live for another 20, 30 years. I'm still going to start everything. That makes me uncomfortable. I have to, at some point, address reality, and then I feel more comfortable about what I'm able to achieve. So yeah, I'd sit down, work everything out, and say, well, it's a lot less than I'd like to have achieved. I mean, I'd like to have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 supersized max colors on the go, but it just isn't realistic for me, because I don't want to be on page 3 of one and page 6 and page 8 of another and page 9 of another in 10 years' time. I want to set more achievable goals than that. So yeah, so sit down and talk to yourself, and this year, 2023, and look at what it is you really, really want to achieve this year. And if it's rotating all the whips you love, then that's what you should do. If it's only focusing on a few, then that's what you should do. It's about looking at your lifestyle and making sure that your stitching life is the happiest one for you. Okay, so that's where I think I'm going to finish now, because I've just about run out of that thread nearly. So this is where I am, and I hope you like what I've done so far. I hope you'll be interested in seeing any more updates or progress that I've got. I am going to be continuing with this one well into the new year as well, I think, and then and I do want to continue with it throughout the year, but we'll see, because sometimes when you're coming up to the summer months, you don't really want to be stitching on Christmas stuff. I know sometimes we don't, so I might want to be switching it out with one of my other projects, but I'm actually not going to make that decision right now. I'm just going to leave it until I get to the time and see how I feel. But I think between now and by the time it gets to the warmer months, we've still got plenty of time for stitching our Christmas pieces. And I don't think there's anything wrong, to be honest, with stitching Christmas piece throughout the year. I mean, maybe I can do everything except the snowman, and then just do the little snowman when I get to the end of next year. When I get closer to Christmas. I don't know. But yeah, so this is where we are, and I just want to say thank you once again for watching. It's been great, and I'd like to hear what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this piece, if you like seeing me stitch more on this piece, and then I will come back and do a little bit more very soon. And yeah, I think that's everything I have to say. So no point saying Merry Christmas. Christmas is over, so I'll say Happy New Year, and I hope you have a good one and you have a wonderful time. Enjoy your stitching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.